All right, one player / coach.
I don't think that's good enough for a playoff quarterback, especially with a running game that was kind of hit and miss last year. So and especially with he's dual threat. I think continuing to elevate. I think that's the key for Altmyer. For Penn State, again, this might be a controversial pick. I have Andy Kotelnicki. I don't have Jim Knowles because I think you should expect a bit of a drop off with the defense just because it takes a while to learn a system. And I don't think he has anything to prove necessarily because he just won a natty.
I say he just won a national championship. He doesn't have much to prove.
And so, but I think Kotelnicki, as much as he improved the offense, there are some things that are worthy of criticism from a year ago. I think the receivers
passing the ball when your running game was working very well against Boise State. Yeah, he's got something to prove.
Yeah. I think some of his game management was pretty poor at times, and I think Penn State fans would agree with that. So
he also was not great against Ohio State. I mean, this is one of the things that people were looking for and saying, "Oh, Andy Kotelnicki is going to help the offense." No touchdowns. Now you should have probably had the one touchdown on the one pass that got intercepted by Igbinosun. Yeah, but still, like you had a 6 or what was it? You had a 10-0 lead in that game.
Yeah.
And you managed to score one field goal the rest of the game. Like,
yeah,
if you are the mastermind coach, football offensive coordinator that people think you are, and I get it, but you got to make it happen. Like, you got to make it happen against Ohio State. You got to make it happen against Notre Dame.
Yeah. And to be fair, you can make an argument that it's Drew Allar who has the most to prove. Like, I think you could have gone either way, but I went with Kotelnicki. I think he has got to be more intuitive with his play calling.
Listen, if you're a system QB, you don't have anything to prove. It's the system that has to prove. Okay. That's my joke.
And it comes full circle.
Okay. All right. My most approved is for Indiana. All right. So I think, not to us in the some people in the Big Ten. I do think Kirk Cignetti has something to prove this year that he's not Mel Tucker. That's not going to be my answer, but I just do want to make that kind of caveat that there are people out there that if Kirk Cignetti goes 7-5, I don't think he's going to go 7-5. But if he does, people are like, oh, it's just Mel Tucker. And it's like, okay, he's not, but there are going to be people who say that.
You think 7-5 people will give really 7-5?
Yeah, I think nationally people will give him a hard time if he goes 7-5.
Nationally, okay.
Yeah, I don't think, and I think there's some Big Ten teams that will as well. I mean, you got to remember how much crap he talked.
That's fair. But so people have to understand though, Mel Tucker didn't go 7-5 after going, having a 10-win season. He won 4 games, 3 games.
Right, but that isn't. The facts don't stop people from creating a narrative.
What?
So, no, my actual answer is actually going to be Roman Hemby. I thought about it during the Maryland episode with you guys. Like Larry was talking about, Roman Hemby's a good a good running back. He just didn't have an offensive line, which I agree with. But at the same time, people are talking about him coming in and being, just what's the running back's name from last year? He's a coach over there now. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head. Anyway,
Tyson Lawton.
No, not him. The starter. Ellison. People are talking about him being just as good as Ellison. And don't get me wrong, Roman Hemby can be just as good as Ellison, if not better, but he needs to prove that to me because Roman Hemby at Maryland was not his best. I think that was probably more on the offensive line than it was on him. But Indiana is going to come in with a better bolstered offensive line. Bob Bostad is the offensive line coach. He's going to do a really good job. He's going to have the options here. Most likely a very strong passing game. Roman Hemby's going to have the options here. Roman Hemby's going to have the supporting cast around him. Can he be a big-time running back? I'm not saying he has to be the best in the nation, but can he be considered for a first, second, third team all Big Ten running back? I think that's what he needs to do to prove it to me.
Yep. Good pick. Good pick.
All right, you got Washington, Zach.
It has to be Jed Fish. This is one of those where it's it's obviously the head coach. went 6-7 a year ago with a team that had enough talent to not go 6-7. Like, you lost to Washington State with terrible play because of terrible play calling and terrible situation of football. You lost to Rutgers despite the fact that you had more talent than Rutgers. No offense to Rutgers. You lost to Iowa by 24. You lost to Indiana by 14 when I believe Curtis Rourke was out for that game, right?
Yes.
Taven Jackson played that game. So you're playing Indiana's backup and you still lose by 2 scores. Like, and you lose to Louisville at the end of the game because you can't stop a nosebleed. Like, it's coaching. It was coaching incompetence that held them back, if we're just being honest. And for everyone saying, well, Jed Fish did the greatest job ever at Arizona. Okay, that was 1 year. 1 year. Okay. He's got to prove that he can do it at Washington. And I'm not convinced he can yet.
I agree. I was going to say Ryan Walters.
That's
because that Illinois defense hasn't really taken. I mean, I shouldn't say it hasn't taken a step back. They had a lot of NFL talent on that before. I think the Illinois defense has still been good ever since Ryan Walters left. Ryan Walters went to Purdue and he was bad. I think Ryan Walters is going to be good at Washington, but was he just produced by Burt Bielema, right? Like, was he just a good piece from Burt Bielema? I don't know. We'll see.
I think that's a good. I agree, but then I would say that Jed Fish is. If Ryan Walters doesn't work out, that's also on Jed Fish. So,
true. All right, mine right now for Iowa is going to be Tim Lester. I think Tim Lester had a very, very good first year at Iowa. I'm not going to say Phil Parker. I think some people are going to want to say Kirk Ferentz. I'm not going to say Kirk Ferentz. I think it's going to be Tim Lester in this one because Tim Lester had a very good running back in Caleb Johnson last year, and he had a very good offensive line. Now, this year, the idea is going to be, can you continue on with what you just got? You just got Mark Gronowski, one of the best quarterbacks in FCS. There's a lot of hype for him. He's not practicing in spring practice right now because of surgery, but he's going to be back for the season. You have a lot of hype in him. And you didn't really have, the best passing game in the world last year with Caden McNamara and Brendan Sullivan. You brought in your guy, Brendan Sullivan, and when he came in, granted he got hurt, so I'm not trying to take too much away from him, but you have a quarterback now. You don't have Caleb Johnson, but you are going to have good running backs that performed well last year. And you have a good piece, a good section of your starting offensive line from last year coming back again. Can you continue to improve the offense, or was this just a product of running a new system that people weren't sure about, that people weren't familiar about? And also, you lost to UCLA and Michigan State last year. Yes, the defense was bad in those games. The defense needed to be better. But it's not like those teams put up 49 points, Like, the offense should have been able to score enough on Michigan State and UCLA. I think UCLA was when that walk-on quarterback had to come in. So I have a little bit more sympathy for that one. But still, Tim Lester, can you do it again? Back-to-back, good offenses at Iowa. Let's see it. Oh, you're muted, Zach.
Sorry.
There you go.
I have one last head coach, and it is Luke Fickell for Wisconsin. And I don't
say that's accurate.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say.
I mean, you got to give us a little bit more than that.
He's gone 6-7 and 5-7. He broke Wisconsin's bowl streak. And he was brought in to be the man that elevates Wisconsin from an 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 team to a playoff contender and national championship contender. They've been anything but at this point.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. We're going to hit a commercial break. We'll be right back, and I will start off by talking about UCLA. We'll be right back. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes to Sports, former college coach Zach Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, we appreciate you being with us. We are now going to get into the second half of our group. In the second half, we are going to start with UCLA. Their player or coach with the most to prove is Tino Sunseri from Indiana. Tino Sunseri, similar to Zach Lujan, has had a pretty short career as a coach. He became a co-offensive coordinator last year for the very first time. Now that offense was dynamic. That offense was awesome last year. So I think this is going to go well at UCLA, but there is also some stuff that makes me nervous about it and makes me say, how well is this going to go? Tino Sunseri, Joey, Aguilar, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's not really a quarterback that jumps off the page for me. Like I did my homework on Curtis Rourke last year. I really believed in Curtis Rourke. I didn't see him coming in and being one of the best Big Ten quarterbacks there were, but I did see him coming in and being a good quarterback option for Indiana. My question was more if they had the talent around him, and they did because they had a really good offense last year. But my question is, can he go over to UCLA now? Can he run an offense on his own? I think the passing game is going to be fine. I think Joey Aguilar, he's a veteran quarterback. Unfortunately, they lost that Robinson, the wide receiver from App State. I don't think he got his waiver to come back, so that's unfortunate for them. But UCLA is still out there trying to get guys in the portal, so they could still bring more guys in. I think the passing game is going to be good. To me, it's can you be a complete offensive coordinator? Can you get the running game going as well? You were in a really good situation at Indiana where you had an offensive coordinator that you were co-offensive coordinators with that had been running things for a while. You had Bob Bostad there to help you run the run game and everything else. Like, things were set up pretty well for him in Indiana. He's going to UCLA now where he's going to be the guy and really his first offensive coordinator role on his own. Was this a good hire? Was this a bad hire? I think we'll know more at the end of season 1.
Yeah. You would think though that it is a good hire, but he has to prove it.
Yeah, I mean, so when I did my good hire, bad hire stuff out of the coordinators, I actually put him in my questionable, concerning hire because I recognize that there's a ton of upside with Tino Sunseri. But I also recognize that there are potential issues with him maybe not being able to call a run game as well. And to be fair, I have these same concerns with Brian Hartline. Now, that's one of the reasons why I like the hire of Tyler Bowden, how you pronounce his last name. I like the hire for them at Ohio State, but I have some of these same concerns with guys who come in and know the passing game really well, but maybe they don't know the running game as well. And that was one of UCLA's issues last year. They did not have a running game for most of the season.
Yeah, that's good.
So, all right, Zach, Ohio State.
I have a hard time saying this one, but Brian Hartline.
Okay, so same as me.
Oh, same as you. Okay.
Well, I was talking about Brian Hartline there, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think he's been a phenomenal wide receiver. I think you made this point earlier, and it was good. Great, a lot of upside, but he's going from being a wide receivers coach and co-offensive coordinator to being the play caller. And as much junk as we've talked about Ryan Day being a play caller and a head coach, he was still a pretty darn good play caller when he was doing double duty. And Chip Kelly, while he got into his funks, was a phenomenal play caller for Ohio State. And so, you think about the past, 8 years for Ohio State, they've had Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. And now Brian Hartline has to replace that. So it's not just, Yeah, it's a lot to live up to. And so it's not just can he do it, but it's also it's you're replacing two of the best offensive coordinators ever. So he's got to live under that pressure. Now, I think Brian Hartline can do it, but he's got to prove it.
Yeah, he does. He does. Blue Wolverine's here. Hello, Blue Wolverine. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you. And Pitt Snipe Huskers here as well. He's asking if we're trashing his Huskers. No. We're not trashing the Huskers. Not yet, at least. Just wait until we get to the most improved player. All right, Zach. The next one is Michigan, and I have Michigan in this one. And I have to say, for me, Michigan, like, I think Sherrone Moore has something to prove in this one. So I think if I was like doing chalk, like I think I would say Sherrone Moore, went 8-5 last year, had multiple first round picks on his team, didn't really find the identity until late in the year. When he found the identity, it was very good, but can he find that early on in the year? Yada, yada, yada. But the player that I'm going to go with is Justice Haynes, because Justice Haynes we're talking about him like we're talking about Jordan Marshall and Justin Haynes as being one of the best running back duos in the Big Ten. Justice Haynes, while he was good at Alabama, he was never really like the guy. And I don't think he has to be the guy at Michigan, but I do think you need a really good running back for him, especially with most likely a true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood starting. That seems to be what the buzz is going to be. Now, I think Justice Haynes is a very talented back. He obviously was very highly rated. I think that he showed flashes at Michigan. It's just, or at Alabama. So he has the opportunity to be very good for them. It's just, can you prove it? Can you prove to be half of that running back duo that could contend with a Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen to be one of the best in the Big Ten? I believe it can happen, but he's going to have to, him and Jordan Marshall together are going to have to prove it.
Yep. I think that's a good pick. It's a really good pick.
Thank you. All right, you got Minnesota, Zach.
Yeah, I've new defensive coordinator Danny Collins having to replace Corey Heatherman. I think we've talked about how good Minnesota's defense has been over the past couple of years, but they have to keep replacing their defensive coordinators. And so Danny Collins has to come in. Again, he's got a stud safety in Coy Parrish. They have some defensive line depth, but can he keep them at the same level, especially as they introduce a new quarterback on offense? Can they play up to a level that allows the offense to grow? And I think a lot of that falls on Danny Collins' shoulders.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that one. All right, Pitt Snipe Husker. This is where we get to your Nebraska Cornhuskers, and So I've been like saying the coach and then talking about the player. I'm going to say the player that I think it is, but then I have a lot to say about Matt Rule, who I do think probably has the most to prove here. Williams Nwaneri, I think it's Nwaneri is how you pronounce it. He's the Missouri player that transferred in, very highly rated recruit. People are expecting a lot from him this year. He just got to prove it. Like, he's got to be a dude. He's got to be that guy that everybody thought he was going to be at Missouri. Didn't really live up to it yet, but also he was still a pretty young player. So he's going to have the opportunity at Nebraska. We'll see if he can. Matt Rule, to me, though, like, remember, what was it, 2 or 3 episodes ago, Zach, when Jed Fish came out and he was starting to talk like, travel and this, that, and the other. And we were like, dude, you need to win some games before you start, trying to tell everybody what to do. Right.
Yep.
I kind of get that with Matt Rule a little bit. Like, I don't necessarily have the issues so much with they finally made a bowl game. So I don't think he has anything to prove so much as Nebraska head coach. Maybe he has something to prove with year 3. Can you bring Nebraska to the really high of highs that you did with Baylor and Temple? I think there might be that there, but Matt Rule, he in press conferences and stuff like that, which I like, I'm not saying I dislike this about Matt Rule. He kind of comes off a little preachy to the rest of college football. He was the one that kind of started the trend with the spring games a little bit. He seems to be one of those people that kind of wants to be like a voice for college football. And so when you listen to him in a press conference, you're like, oh yeah, this guy gets it. He knows what he's talking about. And I think he does, but like he went 7-6 last year.
Yep.
Like nobody is going to Matt Rule and being like, oh yeah, this guy has all the answers about college football, but he went 7-6 last year. Like people were making fun of him when he was saying the thing about, well, guys are going to tamper and take my players in the spring game. You know who doesn't get made fun of that if they say it? Kirby Smart.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
Nick Saban, Dabo Sweeney right after he wins a national championship. Like those guys don't get made fun of for saying that. But people did make fun of Matt Rule, which I understood, but I was also like, guys, he's kind of right. Like, but nobody wants to actually look at if he's right or not because Matt Rule, went 7-6 last year, and Nebraska is still, I mean, we as Big Ten people know that like Nebraska's on, doing well and things are on the way up for him, and that's good. But I think the national perception is like, okay, you won a few more games than before. Like, you're still what Nebraska is now, which could be fair, but at the end of the day, like I think if Matt Rule wants to be this guy that like is a trendsetter and like speaks for the rest of college football and everything, like you got to be better than 7-6.
Right.
So
it's that I think there's man, I'm going to get into not a theological thought, but like a philosophical thought. Like I think you have kind of prescribed influence or positional influence versus earned influence.
Yeah.
And I think Matt Rule in some ways has positional influence. Like he's a head coach at a blue blood.
Right.
But he has not earned that influence over the sport yet. And I think that's what you're tapping into. Is like, I think Ryan Day to count, like, I think in some ways that was what I think people were frustrated with too, is like he would comment on a thing, be like, oh, he's just whining about this thing. It's like, he's not whining, but like, I can understand why people are frustrated because it's like, it kind of does look like sour grapes. Now that he's won a title and he did it the way he did, nobody's going to call him a whiner anymore. And if they do, they're just ignorant. Like,
well, they're just a rival, that people are going to look at it and be like, oh, okay, you're a rival. But like national commentators aren't going to be like, why is Ryan Day talking about the playoffs? Like he's win a playoff game, which he has, but like, that's going to be the comeback every time. Now he says something and people are like, oh, Ryan Day makes a good point here. It needs to be the same thing with Matt Rule. Like Matt Rule needs to get to 9-3, 10-2, and really elevate that program. People are going to be like, oh, look what Matt Rule did with Nebraska. Like, he's somebody we need to listen to about college football. Doesn't have to win a national championship, but yeah. So, Pitt Snipe Husker says 7-6 was awesome. It's sad, but true. Rule does need to get over his skis in front of the mic. It's Nebraska. He kind of has to. It's encouraged. He's trying to give us the Osborne fuzzies. And believe me, I like it. Like I like what Matt Rule has to say. I don't view it that way. To where like, oh, dude, shut up, go win games.
Yep.
But I think the rest of college football does kind of look at it that way. And it's like, if you want everybody to listen to you and not just podcast hosts, you need to win a few more games.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's a good word. But
yeah. So, all right, Zach, you have USC.
Jaden Mayava. Come on down. You're the next contestant on You Have to Prove Something. It's the turnovers. Like USC, I think could be, and I like Lincoln Riley could have been the easy mark here. But I think Mayava is the guy where it's like, if he can be the type of quarterback that I think Lincoln Riley believes him to be, like you're talking about a USC team that probably knocks Notre Dame out of the playoff. Like you're talking about a USC team that probably is not 7-6, but is, 9-4, maybe even 10-3. So I think that's like, he's the difference. He's got to be the difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he needs to prove that he can play aggressive, but still under control. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Okay, next is Rutgers, and for Rutgers, I'm going to be honest. I have a very hard time, Zach, picking it here. I think I'm going to say Greg Schiano, but I don't think he's the issue. I think Rutgers overall needs to prove that, like we just had a discussion the other day, like Rutgers just needs that one big win right? Like they need that statement win over like a ranked team or something, over a Michigan or Penn State or Oregon or USC or something like that. Even like a USC, like it's a blue blood type program. Zach, do you know when the last time Rutgers won a ranked game was?
Is it 2006?
2009. They beat number
2009.
23 USF.
Okay.
Before that, they tied with number 22 Boston College in 1994.
No, they beat Louisville in 2006. That was like a
not
big.
From what I saw.
That was it. Was a big. I mean, that was the big like game that put them on the map.
I'll double check, but not from what I saw.
I'm telling you, it was home in Piscataway. It was a Thursday night game. I was in college.
2006.
Louisville was ranked number 3 in the country, and they beat them.
Number 3. Oh, okay. All right. You're right. So I looked at teamrankings.com, and teamrankings.com lied to me. So there we go. So they have 2 wins since 2006 against ranked teams. 0 since 2009. So we'll say that. The last ranked win they had before, and I went year by year this time. I didn't go to teamrankings.com. So year by year, Zach, I went and where's it say it at? The last time they had a ranked win before 2006 was in 1988. They beat both number 15 Michigan State and number 15 Penn State in the same season.
Wow.
So the last time they had more than one ranked win in a season was 1988. The only ranked wins they've had since then, 2006, number 3 Louisville, you are correct, and 2009, number 23 USF. I don't think it's a Greg Schiano has to prove it issue if it's been going on that long. I think this is just a Nebraska, not Nebraska. This is just a Rutgers in itself needs to prove that they can come out and get those big wins. They can come out and you have to be scared playing, not scared, but you have to be concerned playing them because Rutgers is going to come and they can at least give you a good game. I don't know very many ranked teams after hearing that stat that are going to say, yeah, we're concerned playing Rutgers. So I don't really know how to categorize that one.
Yeah.
As like Rutgers overall, I guess has the most to prove. But I think just the fact they need to get one of those signature big wins if they want to do that.
Yeah.
So
I think it's fair.
All right, we got casual Big Ten in the house. So
Ken,
what's up, Kent? We got to get you on a show, the wrestling show. We got to get Kent on the wrestling show.
Yes.
We'll review the wrestling rankings here at the end. Zach, before we do that, give us your Oregon.
Yeah, I went Dante Moore. I think if Oregon wants to have the same type of success as a year ago, like be in the Big Ten championship conversation, playoff conversation, I think Dante Moore has to be an effective playmaker. You've got new receivers like DeCorian Moore is going to be really good. He's not going to be Jeremiah Smith for everybody wants to say that right now. They're not even the same type of receiver, but you have DeCorian Moore, you have the safety on the back end that came in, Dylan Thieneman, who's one of the best safety. Yeah, it's funny. There's an
excellent freshman year, but last year left more to be desired.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to Kings of the North, and they made a good point. In some ways, there are parallels to Oregon and Ohio State in that they have a 5-star freshman receiver and a dynamite transfer safety. Mm-hmm. But also, and again, Oregon fans are going to be mad at me, they are nowhere near Jeremiah Smith or Caleb Downs. Nowhere near. So I
will say, Dylan, and I'm not trying to make a case for him. I will say though, Dylan Thieneman was a All-American his freshman year, right?
Yes, he was freshman All-American.
Okay, so I will make that and say I don't think we can say he's nowhere near if he was an All-American one time, but you're correct. He is not on the same level as Caleb Downs.
They're not gonna. He's not gonna be a first round pick. I don't think.
I don't think
Caleb Downs will be a top 10 pick, top 5 pick,
top 10, top 15 at worst.
Yeah. So anyway, I say that like Oregon has the infrastructure, but they need a leader. And Dante Moore, like NFL Combine guys were talking about Dante Moore, and they were like, "Oh, he looks great. He's gonna be good. He's got to prove it. He's got to prove it."
I'm working on a graphic right now that has a photo of all the players in the Big Ten who have entered the portal, and I'm going to put a small photo of Kevin Willard. I'm gonna call it "Where's Willard?"
I love it, Kent. This is why we need you back on the show.
Yeah. We need to play "Where's Willard" on the show. So, all right, Zach, our last one. I teased it a little bit, and I will say my Purdue. Zach, I think the program as a whole of Purdue needs to show that they are more than Jeff Braun was. Like, that to me is what has the most pressure on them. Like, they almost beat Illinois last year. That could have been that statement of like, yeah, we had a bad season, but we still beat one of the best teams in the Big Ten. But it didn't happen. Right?
Mhm.
Like Barry Odom has to get some kind of win, has to show something this year where it's like this program was not just Jeff Braun's baby that he resurrected and held up for a little while and then he left and then it fell back to earth and it was terrible. Like this program itself, I know it's not a player or a coach, but this program itself needs to show that we're more than just Jeff Braun having a really good year, right?
Mhm. I think that is true.
Okay.
Yeah. It's man, because I think Purdue. I think the difficulty is that if you don't do something that moves the needle this year, you run the risk of losing all program momentum.
Yeah. I mean, what's moved the needle to you? Like they need a big ranked win. Like I don't know if they're going to get a big ranked win.
I think they've got to do better. I mean, they've got to win at least. I mean, this is a low bar, but
Big Ten weeks, 2 Big Ten games.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think they got to win 2 Big Ten games.
They can't be the laughing stock of the Big Ten.
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yeah, they can't. I think to that point, I think a lot of people could legitimately say Purdue was maybe as bad as one of the like a bottom tier MAC team. Like as
I said last year they wouldn't have finished in the top half of the MAC.
Yeah, like they
That's
might
how bad it was.
They might have been a little bit better than Kent State. Cue all the Kent State jokes.
They were better than Kent State, right?
They were, but like they were that they were that bad that you could compare them to Kent State and not blink an eye.
They were the Kent State of the Big Ten.
Yes. Yeah. Purdue is better than Kent State.
Our Kent casual Big Ten is always around and is always a good sport for us. So, yeah. All right, everybody, we're about to hit an hour and a half. So, Zach, you have any more thoughts on most approved before I move on from the graphic and we look at wrestling rankings really fast before we get out of here?
Let's look at the wrestling rankings.
Okay. All right. Let me bring this up. So, the wrestling rankings, we'll see if anybody else filled it out. And, okay, we got a couple. So, first place. Oh, I could link it to a sheet. There we go. Okay, this is much, much better. So, all right. First place looks like it is Brett Bielema still. Oh, this didn't do what I thought it was going to do. Crud. All right. First place looks like it's still Brett Bielema. Second, Dan Lanning, maybe. Yeah, Dan Lanning. He's pretty high up there, too. 2.92. I don't see anybody with a higher than that other than Brett. Kirk Ferentz is a 1.54. Poor Kurt.
Oof.
Kirk Cinetti has a pretty high one, though. 2.31.
Oh.
Watch out for Kurt. Kurt's a sleeper. Sherrone Moore is almost tied with Dan Lanning. Who was another one? Was Deshaun Foster up there?
I think so. I feel like he was.
Yeah. Greg Schiano with 2.38, so he's up there as well. Deshaun Foster, 2.77. So right now it looks like it goes Burt Bielema, Dan Lanning, Sherrone Moore, Deshaun Foster, I believe, and then Greg Schiano. I think that's your top 5 right now. So I will put the link in the chat.
Love
once
it.
more.
Love it.
And if you would be so inclined, if you're listening on podcast after the fact, you can go on podcast in the podcast description, and you can fill it out there. If you are in the chat, please do click the link. I promise it will not take you to a Nigerian website to steal your money. It will just take you to a Google form that will do that. So, all right, Zach, that's what we got. We'll schedule the wrestling episode. We'll schedule it.
Yeah,
we'll get
that'd be good.
Yeah, I think we have enough data now. We can schedule it.
I love it.
So, Zach, any other thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm tired, man. It's time to
go. Philip says, need to put some SEC coaches in the tournament just because Burt and the higher seeds deserve some easy wins. That's true. That's true.
You're presuming
that some easy win coaches in the SEC.
Shane Beamer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he'd like try to be all tough with you and he'd like fall on his face or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even think of other SEC coaches. It's too late.
Would Lane Kiffin be an easy mark?
Yes.
That was my thought.
Lane Kiffin does TikToks.
Yeah, his Twitter game is awful.
Yeah. And now that I think about it, Matt Rule did a TikTok too.
Oh boy. Matt.
But his was like throwing his hat. So did you not see his TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok.
It was like a news story, so that's how I saw it. I wasn't on TikTok.
We were talking about using social media on campus, and they were like, "Oh, you should use TikTok," and I was like, "What's TikTok?"
I haven't had TikTok in years.
Yeah, I know. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you're old."
That's funny. That's funny. All right, Zach, let's get out of here. Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you for listening. If you're on podcast and you made it all the way here, we really, really appreciate you. If you're still in the YouTube chat from earlier today, we appreciate you. All of our listeners, we appreciate you being here, you listening. Do check us out on Thursday. Well, not us. Check me and Jeff out Thursday night at 9 o'clock. We're going to be looking at NFL position, stuff like that for each conference and some teams. Probably going to break it off into 2 episodes, but I think we're going to focus on the conferences first, and then we'll get into the teams after that. Should be a good episode. A lot of data, stuff like that with Jeff, and we'll go from there. So thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. Have a good one.